The Convict is the 9th episode of the 3rd season of The Office. This is directed by Jeffrey Blitz, and as always there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. It's definitely a really good episode, but I'm feeling uneasy and uncertain about Jim in general, and I'll talk more about that when we get there. Starts off with somebody bringing a baby into the office. Michael does a look who's talking impression, which was a little bit strange, but a fun way to start things off. We then have two main parts of the narrative, one involving, a character called Martin, and one with Jim. And I'll talk about Jim last because I have some unclear thoughts there. I don't really know how I feel, but at the beginning of the episode, some of the characters learn that somebody at Dunder Mifflin is a former convict, and they realise that it must be somebody who's come over from Stanford because they've received a payment for employing him or something like that. It's some scheme to help former convicts get back into work, and they find out from Jan that it's a character called Martin Nash, and Dwight is not happy about this, and Martin's clearly just minding his own business, doing his own thing, and then Michael decides to announce to the office that since most people have heard this anyway, he might as well reveal that Martin Nash was a convict. Not really his place to say that, but Martin wasn't fazed by it, and he tells everybody what happened, and he described a little bit of life inside, and people realise that it sounds better than their average workday at Dunder Mifflin. And, well, Michael's not happy about this, so he lets them all go and have some time outside. It's freezing cold, so they quickly go back inside, and he then decides to put on a bandana and pretend to be Prison Mike. This character he's created who's been inside, and there are a lot of stereotypes with his speech, and he calls Angela a biatch. I don't know if I've even said that before. I've never pronounced it that way. That sounded weird coming out of my mouth. But genuinely, I was shocked that he said that. And then he's talking about Dementors, which I rather enjoyed. It's a very powerful performance, but it's very, very disturbing. And one of my favourite bits was when Dwight asked him a question and Angela said under her breath not to encourage him, which I thought, I don't always agree with Angela's outlook, but in that moment I completely agreed with her. And people aren't buying it. They're not believing that he is Prison Mike or that's what prison is like. Basically, they're not taking Prison Mike seriously. I mean, how could you? So I will say I was very surprised by what Michael did next, because I feel like Michael, when he does something wrong, it's usually because he's taken a joke too far or he said something inappropriate. But locking them in the room, not only is that a fire hazard, because, well, he could walk away and then, well, I don't need to explain the rest of what would happen, but that's horrific. That's absolutely horrific. And I didn't like that at all. Eventually they get that out. And, well, it's quite interesting because this is the second Stanford employee, I think only the second, to have left after they were transferred to Scranton. And I think that that's really interesting because it's kind of like everybody who's used to Michael and his ways just kind of brush it off. They just put up with it. But new people realise they don't have to put up with it. And they're leaving almost as quickly as they arrived. And it's not necessarily the case that I don't want them around. I think having new blood is a really great way to make things quite interesting, and I'm hoping we get to see a lot more of the Stanford employees other than just Karen and Andy, although I'm not sure how many were actually transferred. But it does seem like when we focus on a Stanford employee, they've then left at the end of the episode, so that's a little bit awkward. But it does kind of highlight the fact that the only people who can tolerate Michael are those who have been around for a long time and are used to it. So that part of the episode was quite a roller coaster. I feel like Michael had the right intentions to begin with, to show that he wasn't bothered that they were hiring a felon, but as is usually the case with Michael, he didn't have the right way to go about it. It was interesting, but definitely quite shocking at times, actually. And then we come to Jim. And the reason I don't know how I feel about this is because I don't know what Jim is thinking. It starts off with Jim confirming that he is dating Karen. I thought that was pretty obvious, but I needed to hear it from him. And then Andy asks Jim if Andy should go after Pam. And Jim says, absolutely you should. And my first thought was, why is he saying that? Is he saying that to put some distance between Jim and Pam? If Pam is seeing somebody else, it might be easier around the office. But we learn quite quickly that actually he's just having fun, because he then tells Andy a whole bunch of stuff that Pam hates. But obviously he's telling Andy that these are things that Pam loves. And Pam is quite confused when Andy approaches her and offers to, well, insists on taking her out almost, and basically says a bunch of stuff that is not to her liking. And Andy tells her to just think about it. He walks away, and Pam looks at Jim, because when Andy walked away, he patted Jim on the back or thumped him on the arm, I can't remember, but he touched him. And Pam obviously realised this has something to do with Jim. And Jim just turned around, and the exchange between them, the silent exchange, it felt like old times. And this is the bit where I don't know how I feel, because Karen then found out that Jim was playing with Andy, and Karen said she wants in on the game and asked her what she could do, and Jim had said, well, the target has been Pam, but maybe he should lay off her a little bit and give somebody else a go. And I don't know why. I can't work out why he wouldn't want Karen to be in on that. Is it because he doesn't want Karen to have any involvement with Pam? I'm assuming Jim hasn't told Karen he had feelings, well, was in love with Pam. If she doesn't know that, that's definitely going to come out at some point. Probably from Michael, the way things usually go, and that's going to be really awkward. So maybe that's why he didn't want Karen to be involved. Or maybe he liked the fact that it was just a little game between him and Pam, and it was kind of a thing between them, and he didn't want anybody else involved in that. So I don't really know where his head's at. He's dating Karen. He's clearly pretending he doesn't have feelings for Pam anymore, or at least is able to get over what he was feeling, knowing that there wasn't anything he could do about it. But at the same time, maybe he doesn't know that. Maybe he is pretending, and deep down he is aware he still has feelings for Pam. I don't know what I'm saying at this point. I'm just very confused and very frustrated, and I really, really wish he would just admit the truth, because it's clear he still feels exactly the same way he does, and something needs to be done about this. As I said, I'm predicting something will happen at the end of this third season, which is quite a while away. Not that I'm complaining, we have a lot more episodes left, but I thought something was going to happen at the beginning of the third season or the end of the second season, and I was wrong. So fingers crossed, very tightly, that something happens soon, something positive happens soon, because honestly, getting a little desperate. The Convict was a pretty interesting episode of The Office, uncomfortable at times, but ultimately not a bad episode at all.